We're going to do a complete garden transformation from this to this. We've spent years developing best practices, and we'll show you how to go from seeding and bed preparation to the bounty you can get from companion planting properly. Ideally, you want to keep green growing plants in your garden all year long. That way you're continuously building the soil. We didn't do that this year, so instead it's time to clear out last year's vegetation and prepare it for this year's garden. Try not to disturb the soil too much, as you want to protect those all-important fungi networks. Here we're using a broad fork which aerates the soil and breaks it up, but doesn't destroy it like tillage does. Next up, we will spread living compost over the beds to provide the fertilization and the microbiology necessary for good, healthy soil. To make good compost, you want a combination of green and brown inputs. Green inputs are high in nitrogen, like the cow and horse manure and leftovers from our garden. Brown inputs are higher in carbon, and for us, are shavings from the stalls along with old hay. We let it cure for 6 to 9 months, and as you can see, it's just teeming with earthworms. After amending the soil with our living compost, we then cover it with newspaper and then top it off with mulch. We do that to help with weed pressure. It takes a bit more time up front, but we think it's worth it. While we're preparing the beds, we are also getting our seeds started. Depending on the variety, you are going to want to get your seeds started 8 to 12 weeks before you plan on getting the plants into the ground. Fill the pods with earth and then press them down lightly. Add additional earth if needed to top off the pods.
I'm starting some asparagus seeds. Right now, they got to go about 1 inch down. But I want to get them going now because these guys can take like over 2 months to germinate. They are really slow germinators, and that's why I'm doing them in these bigger pots. So that
they have a big root base.
Well, that and it'll hold moisture for a little bit longer than the small ones that Eric and Lily are messing with right now.
After planting the seeds, we cover them with a humidity dome. Then we put them in an extra shop room under fluorescent lights with a little heater in there so they stay at the proper temperature. Note, some varieties need to be under complete dark, so get a black humidity dome. When the weather got nicer, we took them outside to await planting.
Each one of these beds are 16 feet by 14 feet, and the whole concept of companion planting that I use is based off of the methodology of Sally Jean Cunningham in her book, Great Garden Companions. I've read this book so many different times, and it really struck my fancy, so I wanted to apply this gal's concepts to our garden. The main focus of the companion planting is to try and get a minimum of 5 separate plant families in each of the beds. And by plant families, we mean root vegetables versus lettuce type vegetables, brassica families, bean families, corn families, herb families, and flower families. So with each one of our beds, outside of my perennial beds, the perennial beds are just a conglomeration of long-running vegetables like rhubarb, along with the beautiful flowers that I enjoy. What I have seen with this practice of interspersing different species, plant groups, is that my yields tend to be 2 to 3 times what the seed packets claim they will be. Also, the plants have a tendency to be twice as large as the seed packets claim they'll be. They do get a little rambunctious with growth. It does make it harder to harvest, but the plants are really healthy, and once they're in the ground and going, I don't have to do anything with them at all. I just let them grow, and then I go out and pick what I want to pick. When it comes to pests, I have bugs that come in like cucumber beetles, but whereas they've been a problem in the past, now that I've got all these long-term perennial beds that circle the main veggie garden going, And I have so many different interspersed flowers, herbs, and plants that when they come in, there's plenty of room for those insects that are predators to things like cucumber beetles and cabbage flies, and they keep those numbers down. Every year I find a new type of insect living in my garden, and most of the time they help me out. The one issue that I do have with the way that I'm currently growing is because the plants end up so dense is I do get slugs. And so this year I'm going to try a beer trap along the vegetables and flowers wherever I can fit it to see if I can resolve that one problem. The other upside of having the plants this dense is they deal much better with the hot sun and the dry season. The watering is a lot more effective because they have a tendency to shade each other and protect the soil as well. One bed that we're looking at is my main lettuce bed, but that main lettuce bed, its backbone is kale, marigolds, zinnias, chicory. There is a squash trellis that ended up shading the lettuce during the hotter parts of the summer. There are bush beans, celery, Chinese cabbage, spinach, parsley, and arugula. All of these different plants are there to mainly support the 5 different types of lettuces that are growing in this bed. But again, they all function and work well together. In our main tomato bed, which was planted with 6 types of tomatoes, you will find those tomatoes interspersed with 8 types of basils, 2 different types of leeks, 3 different types of onions, as many marigolds as I could stuff in, and it's ringed with calendula flowers as well.